Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jody Lee, and I will be the moderator on this webinar, What's New in ENVI 5.4. I'm excited to be joined today by Jeff McKissick, Solutions Engineer at Harris Corporation, who will be presenting the new features and analysis tools that just came out in the newest version of ENVI. He will also touch on the new cloud analytic capabilities of GSF 2.1. I've muted the phone lines for all attendees. If at any time you have questions, please feel free to enter them into the chat box, and our presenter will try to answer as many as he can at the end of this presentation. I'd also like to mention that a recording of this webinar will be emailed to you in the next 24 hours, and we'll also have it available online at www.harrisgeospatial.com by tomorrow. So you're welcome to check that and share it with your colleagues. I'm now going to turn things over to Jeff.
Thanks, Jody. Like Jody said, my name is Jeff McKissick. I am a solutions engineer here at Harris. I've been here for about 6 months now. And today's webinar, we're going to be going over some of the new features we have coming out in our new release of ENVI 5.4. So that's just a picture of me. There's my contact information. We're out in Broomfield, Colorado. Like Jody said, we're going to have a recording of this webinar released 24 hours after this. And if you have any questions, I'll try and answer them at the end of the webinar. And if I don't get to all of them, feel free to reach out. My email is right there, and I'll try and answer them as quickly as possible. So this is going to be our agenda today for our webinar. I'm going to give you a brief overview of Harris Corporation and Harris Geospatial. Today's topics, we're going to go over some of the new features in our newest release, which include new sensor and data types, some new image analysis and classification techniques. We're going to introduce you to our new classification framework, some powerful new visualization and annotating tools when you get your classification product. And then I'm going to go over briefly creating a tool in ArcMap using our GSF Pi bridge, as well as our new licensing system that will be available in ENVI 5.4. And then afterwards, I will take any questions. So just a little bit about Harris itself. There's about 22,000 employees worldwide. I think it's around 23 now. We're lots of engineers and scientists. We used to be Axcelis Visual Solutions until about a year and a half ago when Harris bought us out. A little more information about where we fit in at Harris. We fall under the space and intelligence systems, which were basically just a lot of sensors. We're just a small geospatial piece, which you can see in the bottom left image there where it says geospatial. We focus primarily on analytics. Some of you may be familiar with what we do and some of the products that we provide, but for the rest of you, I'll give just a brief high-level overview of what we do before we get into today's topics. Our main software packages are ENVI and IDL. IDL is our interactive data language, and for some of our workers who code every day, this is where they spend most of their time. ENVI was actually written in IDL, so through IDL you can access most of the tools ENVI has available. ENVI is the environment for visualizing images. ENVI is all about raster and image processing and has tons of different tools in there for pre-processing, multispectral, hyperspectral data. And then additionally, we have a software called Jaguar. It is a data ingestion and cataloging product. It lets you ingest live video streams, overlay vectors of streets or roads on that as well. Lastly, in the corner there, we have Geiger mode LiDAR. It is a LiDAR sensor that lets you fly higher and faster to get even more dense point clouds. So it's set for large area collects such as big cities and states. So that's just a quick overview of Harris. Next, I'm going to jump into ENVI a little bit and what we're going over today. ENVI is really all about processing and ingesting data. Just for a few of the different data formats we support right here, we have SAR, which is that really crazy-looking image in the bottom middle there. We also have multispectral and hyperspectral data as well, and we support processing LiDAR products and analytics for elevation information as well. Here's a slide of some of ENVI's capabilities and some of the stuff we like to do with our data. Some of that we're going to talk about today is the classification framework. This is some great information I just took right off our website. I put the link there in the bottom, www.harrisgeospatial.com. Kind of the primary things we have are feature extraction, or sometimes called image segmentation. We have some registration tools, change detection, whether that's image to image or thematic change, meaning two classification images. We also have many classification tools, which we'll get into in a little bit here with one of our new classification techniques. Most of all these analytics are made available in the cloud, so that's kind of what that little graphic in the right-hand corner is down there, if that's where you work. So this is kind of today's scenario. This is an overview I had for ENVI today. I'm going to go ahead and jump into today's topics, which is what's new. ENVI 5.4 is our newest release and has a number of really cool new features I'm going to be going over and demonstrating today. We have a number of new sensors and data formats that ENVI is able to ingest. We also have new scientific dataset browser that allows you to easily build new ENVI rasters that contain a combination of scientific data. We have a powerful new classification framework that I'm going to be demoing that allows you to train one classifier on one data set and apply it to a similar data set, as well as evaluate the performance of that classifier. This is included in both our desktop and enterprise environments. We also have some new tools to easily edit your classification once you've run them and trained your classifier. Some new annotation items for on-glass annotations as well. Some of our new visualization tools that I'm going to show you today include colorizing a point cloud, our DICE raster tool, and some high-level updates of our viewshed analysis workflow. And then I'm going to close up by going over our GSF Pi creating a tool in ArcMap, and briefly mention our new licensing system that will be available in ENVI 5.4. So with every release of ENVI, we make it a priority to really ensure that we're keeping up to date with our new and emerging sensor formats. So in ENVI 5.4, we've added support for our ADS-80 airborne digital sensor with high spatial resolution, our Gaofin 2, which is a series of Chinese civilian remote sensing satellites, and our newest satellite is GOES-R, which is a weather satellite and a next-generation geosynchronous environmental satellite that I will show you on our next slide, as well as Himawari 8 and 9 satellites, which are also meteorological satellites. We also have the ability to read net CDF and HDF raster datasets with our new scientific dataset browser, which I'll show you here in a second as well. This next slide is just a simulated cloud and moisture image of our GOES-R satellite. This isn't the real data that's been released yet. When we do, it'll look a little different, but this is just a good representation of what it might look like, and this also has some of our new annotation tools added to this image as well. If you can see in the bottom there, we added a color bar, some grid lines, and a few titles as well. So this is our scientific dataset browser. I'm just going to go through this briefly before I go ahead and open it up in ENVI and demo it for you. This will support any HDF and NetCDF raster dataset. The dataset browser lets you easily build new ENVI rasters that contain a combination of scientific data, attributes, and lat-long information. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of this and open ENVI real quick. So this is our ENVI interface for those of you who haven't seen it. And I am going to open a H5 AVR HRR dataset from Hurricane Bonnie. If I just drag it in here, a dialog will open up with our dataset browser. Some of the new updates we have to this are the dataset browser user interface has some new icons that simplify the process for building rasters. So if I open these up, we have these three little buttons in the middle that will transfer them to our raster builder and build our raster. We can add standard ENVI header fields to the new raster with known metadata, as well as selecting latitude and longitude datasets from the source file and adding them to the geographic information folder. So I'm going to go ahead and add a couple of these just to show you how it's done. If I click on 3 of them, maybe not this one, click on these 3, move them over, they get added to our raster. We'll go ahead and add our image, and then maybe just projection info. One of the other new techniques with this as well is if we come up here to File, we can export our dataset structure, and with this we can create a report of the data fields and the metadata that comprise our raster. The available formats are text, XML, and JSON. So we're not going to do that today, but also here in templates, you can export a template. This is good for ENVI programmers that manually create XML templates for reading data in NetCDF datasets. Previously, templates only worked with HDF5 and NetCDF4, but these templates are extremely helpful in building the same raster and metadata structure from several different data formats. Using a template kind of prevents you from having to use the dataset browser to really define the raster and metadata for every file. So we built our raster, and then we can just come down here to create raster, and it opens up. We get our nice little image. And that's pretty much how you use the scientific dataset browser. I'm going to go ahead and close this example. So as I mentioned before at the beginning of this webinar, we have a new classification framework that we're really excited about. I'm going to go over 2 quick slides about it and some of its features, and then go ahead and show you in ENVI just how it's done. So the new ENVI classification framework provides a powerful and flexible way to classify your data. You can create and train a classifier on one data set and apply it to similar data sets with similar features. Traditionally, classifiers are tied to one data source, but with our new framework, you can train and evaluate the performance of a classifier once and apply it anywhere, including desktop or enterprise environments. These classifiers included now are support vector machine and softmax regression, as well as iterative and gradient descent trainers. So as you can see in our little sequence here at the bottom of the slide, you start by finding examples in your image or your ROIs, regions of interest. These are specific features in your image that you can easily differentiate and identify so that you can train your classifier. Next, we're going to insert these ROIs into our softmax regression classifier and run it through one of our 2 trainers, either the iterative or gradient descent I mentioned before. If we did a good job of training our classifier, then our evaluation curve is going to look something like that 3rd image right there, just a descending L curve. If we did a bad job of picking our ROIs, our graph is going to show some sort of funky up and down, like not a clean L curve like we have here. So lastly, we apply that to our image, and we get back a nice classification image that I'm going to go over here in a second. Lastly, pertaining to our classification updates, you can affix certain annotation items to display on your screen, and they will remain stationary while you zoom, pan, rotate around. These are called on-glass annotations. These include text, symbols, legends, scale bars, color bars, grid lines, anything that's going to really make your final product look a little nicer. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into our next demonstration of our framework. For today's scenario, we're going to be using customer data we received from Urgis. It is a large grass field that we previously did some classification on, where we were trying to find invasive species of weed. So as you can see here, once it loads on your screen, we're going to have a big grass field of a couple different shades of green. The customer gave us a few shapefiles on this image to kind of show where our invasive species was that we were looking for. So pertaining to our classifier, the first thing we needed to do was get some ROIs and some training data. So prior to this webinar, we created some of our own already. I'll go ahead and zoom and wait for it to come in for you. But here in red, we made a ROI for dirt. And then if I come over here we had some of our just regular grass that isn't our invasive species, and then where I have in blue over here was one of the shape files where we knew that our invasive species actually was. So the next step here, we have our ROIs, we have our image. The next thing would be to train this and apply it. This process took about 2 minutes, so I went ahead and did it beforehand and came up with our classification image. Once this loads, it'll look something like this. We got a pretty good image of everything in red here was our dirt. We didn't get too much grass because it kind of was noisy and pretty similar to some of our dirt patches. And then that invasive species in blue, where we knew we had some, was found pretty well. ENVI has some also pretty good tools, a transparency tool, so if we want to look at the layer under it, can slowly go back and forth, and you can see kind of down here in that bottom left corner where we have our blue invasive species ROIs, it did a pretty good job of classifying that as what we wanted it to be. So that's going to be all for our classification demo. I'm going to remove all our layers and clean this up a little bit. And as I mentioned before, we have a number of new visualization techniques that I'm going to go through a few brief slides for. Just real quick, I'm going to describe what each one is, and then I'll get into how to actually set them up and run them in ENVI. We're going to be using the same data set for each of these techniques, and we're going to start off by using our dice raster tool. Our dice raster tool, what this does is it separates our raster into tiles based on either tile count, distance, pixel count, or a vector shape file. So pretty much it's taking a large image like that and subsetting and cutting it up into smaller tiles. The next tool I'm going to go over will be our colorizing a point cloud. Once we've divided up our image into smaller tiles, we're going to colorize that point cloud using RGB data from our raster at the same location as our point cloud file. So what this is doing is each point in our point cloud is receiving a RGB value of the raster pixel that has the same location as that raster image that we are applying it to. Lastly, I'm going to go over a viewshed analysis workflow. After we've colorized our point cloud and diced up the raster, we're going to go ahead and load our digital elevation model of the AOI we have here in Boulder and see if we can get a good viewshed of some of our scene. Our viewshed analysis workflow has been updated with some new observer constraints such as horizontal and vertical field of view, azimuth, pitch. These view constraints can more accurately model line of sight analysis due to a new algorithm they decided to use called the Israelevitz algorithm. This performs really well in densely sampled terrain elevation models. So it works really good with our Geiger LiDAR. So I'm going to go ahead and get back into ENVI. And the data set we're going to be using today is just a normal TIFF file, a RGB 3-band image of Boulder. So open it up, we have Boulder, we have our flat irons. Looks pretty nice. So if I come over here to our toolbox and I search for dice raster, we'll get this tool right here, and it says you can do it by distance, pixel count, tile count, or vector. We'll just do tile count. It's the simplest one. Our dialog comes up and it's going to ask for our input raster. So we're going to use this Boulder TIFF file that we just loaded up. X tiles and Y tiles is how many tiles up and down for X, and then or up and down for Y, and side to side for X. We'll just go with 2 for each to make our processing time a little faster. And then you click OK, and we'll go ahead and call it something else. And this should run pretty quickly. Should see it updating on your screen. And then over in our layer manager, we're going to have our 4 tiles that it just created. So I'll turn off our original image, and then each of these got broken down into a separate layer. So it's a pretty good tool for if you're trying to use a subset, or this would work really well with our classification workflow. If you wanted to just test it on one of these tiles and then apply it to the other three, that could work as well. So that's going to be our dice raster tool. Next, I'm going to go into our colorize in a point cloud. We previously received a point cloud of this area, and what this looks like typically will be this kind of like an elevation looking model of blue, green, yellow, and red images. This is what a typical point cloud looks like. So this will be our kind of where we start from, and then we'll get this, and in our toolbox, if we come over here and type in just color, it'll say color point cloud right here. You'll open it up. We'll put our input raster, which is going to be our folder TIFF file, not the tiles, not the smaller subsets, but the whole image. Click OK, and then you input your point cloud that we already have. For the sake of time for this webinar, I went ahead and processed this already. It took about a minute, 45 seconds to 2 minutes. It did a pretty good job, but that just depends on how many iterations you want to run. So I'm going to close this, and our final product ended up looking like this. So if we compare that to that first image of just the blue, green, and red colors that we had, this is what it processed and came up with. As you can see, it did a pretty good job. It looks true color. Your RGBs are applied pretty well. If I come back over here to ENVI and I zoom in on that area right here, the colors seem to match up pretty well and have done a good job. So from there, we are going to do a viewshed analysis on this. I'm going to clean up my layer manager a little bit. I'm just going to load in that full image TIFF file we had of Boulder. So we'll use this small little area down here. If we come up to our toolbox and we search for viewshed, we will have our viewshed analysis workflow in the bottom. If we open that up, we'll get our dialog, and it's going to ask for our elevation model and our image file. So for our image file, we're going to use our Boulder TIFF. And for our digital elevation model, I already loaded in our elevation model that we previously processed from our LiDAR data. So if I click OK, open that up, we'll go ahead and click Next, and it's going to ask us to insert a couple view sources. So this little cursor you can see in the middle of my screen, if I click, it'll drop almost like a person or a camera, and from these points is where it's going to do our viewshed analysis. So I'm just going to do 3 for the sake of processing time. Click Next and let this run for a minute. And it should give us a nice image where anything shown in red will be not visible, and everything shown in green should be visible. Like I said, this uses a new algorithm known as the Israeli bits, and it performs extremely well in densely sampled terrain elevation models, and is significantly faster than the radial interpolation method used in previous versions of ENVI. So it seems to have done a pretty good job. It got a lot of good areas that are available to see in our viewshed. Most of it's not due to the houses and high elevation. So that is our viewshed analysis tool. I'm going to go ahead and cancel this, and we have a couple more things we're going to show you. The last tool I'm going to show you is our GSF Pi tool. GSF Pi allows you to integrate ENVI analytics into an ArcMap toolbox so that any task or tool that you're able to use in ENVI can now be made available and called in ArcMap. For today's example, we're just going to use an ISO data classification tool from ENVI and see how it runs on that Boulder data set that we just looked at in ENVI. So if I open up ARC, I am loaded in our folder image previously. And if we come over here to catalog, and under system toolboxes, we have a GSF Pi toolbox. And in there, we have a create a tool tool. So if you double click on that, it'll come up with this dialog, and all this is doing, it's asking for an endpoint. So this is where GSF Pi is calling that task from ENVI from. So over here on the right, it tells you exactly what to type in, what to put, anything like that. So I'm going to go ahead and type in our local host. We're calling ESC, and we're going to be calling ENVI. And like I said, we're going to be doing ISO data classification. The important thing about this is to make sure that you spell the tool exactly correct. Otherwise, it's not going to read or understand what you're doing. Our output toolbox, this is where we're going to go to our home folder and call it whatever you want. These previous toolboxes are ones I've made before this. So we'll just call it GSF Toolbox 5. Go ahead and click Save. I can click OK. It'll add. It's going to add our tool. What this is doing is creating our tool right now. It is calling our ENVI extension from our task engine and putting it into ARC. So like I said, this completed pretty fast. It took maybe 5 seconds. And if I come over to catalog, that GSF Toolbox 5 that we just created should have an ISO data classification tool in it. Give it 1 second to load. And there it is. So if we go ahead and click on our classification tool, this is going to be the same exact dialog you see when you open up ENVI. It's going to ask for how many classes you want to classify, your threshold, iterations. That's just going to increase processing time with the more that you do. For processing time, it took about 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes for this one as well. So I previously ran it in the sake of time for this webinar. So I'm going to close this, and our classification image ended up looking like this. So it did pretty well. This is what you would see in ENVI. It took about 1.5 minutes, so the processing time wasn't bad at all. So yeah, that's what GSF Pi is really good for. Any tool that you can call an ENVI, that you can do an ENVI, you can create an ARC and set up right in your ARC map and create whatever type of output or map you want to come up with. The last thing I'm going to mention today is going to be our new automated licensing system. Starting with NVI 5.4, Harris is now going to use a third-party solution called Flexera licensing technology. This is going to allow you to quickly self-license your software, efficiently manage your licenses from a licensing portal, and easily deploy your software on a machine or server. You can obtain your license through a portal hosted by Flexera. Then you can choose to activate the license on a licensed server or on an individual node-locked machine. We have plenty of documentation and help documents for this available on our website if you want to go there and find out a little more about some of our new features in our licensing. So that's pretty much all I have for you guys today with our new features. I'll leave it open for questions. We ran a little early today, so more questions the better. And anything I can't answer for you guys today, feel free to email me or reach out, and we will be sending out an FAQ as well of questions that we're not able to answer. So with that,
great. Thank you, Jeff, for the informative presentation. Like Jeff said, we're going to address some of the questions that have come in already. As a reminder, you can type the question into the question area of your GoToWebinar dashboard. So with that, the first question is, when is the new release actually coming out of ENVI?
The new release should be available at the beginning of the year, I believe, starting in January. The release date should be on our website as well.
And yes, and we did send out some emails to maintenance users already who can start getting the new release now, so at least in the US and Canada. So you should have received that if you are a maintenance user already. Where can I find more information about the new licenses?
The new licensing framework, there's plenty of help documents. You can go to your help or about ENVI or IDL, and when you open it up in your user interface, and it will take you to the documentation, as well as our Harris Geospatial website should have plenty of information on there as well.
I will post a link in the chat box with the link to get that information as well. Can GSFPY call any tool from the ENVI toolbox into ARC?
Yes, any tool, like I said, any tool that is available in ENVI's toolbox, in ENVI's user interface, you can call into your ARC toolbox using the GSFPy bridge.
Great. I've lost the questions. Oh, you're there. Okay. Does ENVI 5.4 include a new version of IDL as well? If so, can you summarize any of the changes or post the IDL release notes?
Yes, so we do have some cool new features coming out in IDL 8.6. It will be released with ENVI 5.4. We didn't go over too much today, but we do have a really good help document on all the new features in IDL that we can make available to you immediately, yes.
Great. Is ENVI Classic included with the new release?
I am not sure about ENVI Classic. I can certainly find out that question for you.
Okay, sounds good.
One of the questions I saw.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Go for it, Jeff.
One of the questions I saw was, is the color bar going to be made available for spectral indexes? And yes, you will be able to apply it to different spectral indexes and different feature layers.
Good. Where's the system toolbox file located?
The system toolbox file location should just be right there in ARC in the catalog. If you come over here to catalog and under, I believe, yeah, under toolboxes, you have my toolboxes and then system toolboxes, and the GSFPy bridge will be in, there will be a tool in there for it if you have that in your subscription.
Okay. Can you explain more on the licensing options? Is it not server-based single license option anymore?
I am not sure. Any licensing questions, our technical support team is really quickly and good at getting back to people. They've had a lot of questions regarding the new licensing, so they're really jumping on top of any question they have about that. Personally, I'm not sure the logistics about what goes into the new licensing, so we can get that question answered for you as well.
Great. There's some other questions about the licensing server, so we can do that in the FAQs.
Yeah.
Do you have SGFPY functionality or ArcGIS Pro?
ArcGIS Pro should work fine. I'm not sure about what that first one was.
I am not sure either. Do you have any other questions on your side, Jeff?
I don't know. Anything regarding licensing or IDL, we will put together a in-depth FAQ for any questions you have about that.
Okay. Oh, I have a couple more. In ENVI 5.4, or is ENVI 5.4 having any recoding tools for refining the classified data? I guess.
Say that one more time. Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Is ENVI 5.4 having any recoding tools for refining the classified data? Does that make sense?
Yes. Our new classification framework does have some manual coding and cleanup for it. I'm not sure about exactly how to all the behind the scenes on that, but there is a lot going on with our new classification framework that I didn't go over today. So any questions on that, feel free to reach out to me individually, and I can give you an in-depth either demo or walk you through exactly how to do it.
Great. Somebody did ask if I can post the training courses into the chat box as well, so I'll do that shortly. We will have a recording of this webinar. Somebody was asking about that, so it will be up on our website at www.harris.com, and I will also email it in the next 24 hours to everybody who registered. So you're welcome to share it with your colleagues. Let's see. What are the blue areas in the colorized point cloud? I think that was in your presentation.
In the presentation. The blue areas right here. This was a different data set that we used, and the middle image, I think whoever put this slide together got them mixed up, but I think the blue and red image was just a classification image in our ENVI LiDAR, and then the middle image was what it looked like with the RGB raster applied to it.
Great. Does ENVI plan on supporting manual point cloud editing of .las files or a similar LAS editing ability?
Yes, we have an extension called ENVI LiDAR. It's what I opened up and showed you our RGB values in. You can do all your manually editing and processing in ENVI LiDAR, and then you can push all these products, vector shape files, you can push them to either ENVI or ARC or even a PowerPoint if that's what you want to do.
Another question that came in is the first version that will be included with the GSF-PY bridge. Is this the first version?
Yes, I believe so. We haven't really released anything with GSF. It was formerly known as ESE, but yes, this is going to be our first version, I believe, released in ENVI.
Great. Is the color bar legend feature now available for spectral indexes processed in the ENVI?
Yes, that was the question I previously said before. Yeah, it's okay. The color bar, yes, you will be able to apply it to spectral indexes as well.
Great. I know some of these are posted a couple of times, I think, or rephrased a different way.
Okay. Yeah.
So I think that we'll just wrap up and we'll put together the FAQ sheet to send to everybody. Thanks for everyone's attention on the line, and thank you again, Jeff, for presenting.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks everyone for coming out.
Yep, thank you. Have a great rest of the day.